Welcome to Framework. This is John, one of the hosts of Framework, and with me as always, the other host of Framework, Al. How are you today, Al?
I'm good. I guess it's a little bittersweet here. This is arguably we're passing the peak of Bioware with this closing out Dragon Age Origins.
I suppose there's definitely a. This is one of the lights out titles. You know, what would you consider the peak of Bioware? Right? I mean, it's not going to be a Dragon Age after this one.
I guess technically, Mass Effect 2 came out released after Origins, but we've already covered that.
Right.
And sort of and I'm not even sure it might, the DLC stuff we're talking about today might have come out after Mass Effect 2 anyway, even technically. But
sure.
I think it's hard to say. I mean, even, I'm more of a defender of Mass Effect 3 and the Mass Effect as a complete trilogy product there. But once Mass Effect is rounded up and we're on to Dragon Age 2, the peak is somewhere in the rearview mirror. It's got it. No matter where you place it. Nobody's going to place it at Inquisition.
There are people who came to Dragon Age through Inquisition. That's their favorite one.
Oh, these are Morrowind people that are
the younger cohort that hasn't the patience for old school true RPGs like Dragon Age Awakenings.
But even for them, they've got Mass Effect. I don't know. I guess that it's a different. I'm being a little closed-minded. That there is just a different type of RPG. It's almost like to me, yeah, they're all role-playing games, I suppose, but a sort of an Elder Scrolls single-player first-person perspective RPG is its own genre, distinct from a party-based RPG here. Mass Effect being a shooter versus a point-and-click pause, a tactics thing like Origins or Knights of the Old Republic, they still feel closer together to me than they do to an Elder Scrolls.
Well, I mean, you could make a very clean delineation here in that this is the end of the tactical RPG for BioWare, perhaps. It's pretty much just action RPG after this.
Yeah. But we closed out the main story branch the main game before. Now we're sort of, there's a crop of DLC packs here, most prominently Awakenings. Although there's also Witch Hunt and a couple of other things that don't really have any significant story beats to talk about.
It's 5 in all. I guess the real ones of interest here are Awakenings and Witch Hunt. And then there's, 3 other ones that are kind of just here you go. Here, do you want some more Deep Roads action? There's fight modules, I guess you'd call them, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the Golems of Amgarak felt like. It's just an extra dungeon crawl if you just want to do some more battling with your party. Except you don't get to use your party. They saddle you with a new one, a couple of nobodies. Some
boring dwarves, yeah.
And then there's the Darkspawn Chronicles, which is sort of a what-if thing that lets you play as the Darkspawn in a alternate reality where they wipe out humanity, which I've never even bothered with.
It's kind of fun. It's basically the last mission of Dragon Age Origins, but you're playing as a Herlock Vanguard. The premise is that the hero of Ferelden, the main character in the game, died at Ostagar. And so basically the fun of it is it's sort of you're putting down Alistair's attempt to to win, and you kill every character from all the party members show up and you kill them all as a Darkspawn, and that's all it is. And it's cute, I guess, but it's I would say without question the least of these DLCs. I don't know, Golems is pretty close, but Golems at least has the hardest fight in the series, I think, in it. I believe that is the claim to fame of Golems.
Yeah, that's where I gave up on it, even for this exercise. I was like, screw it. There, and then there's Leliana's Song, which is an interesting little module, as a good way of putting it. It's just a sort of flashback backstory for her. That's kind of what she told us about in the game. If you get her to open up to you, but it's sort of stealth based to get in an engine that is not built around that. So that's always a little hinky.
It feels like they wanted to do this one for everybody. Everyone gets an origin thing, and then they only bothered to make the one. It's kind of the vibe I get from it. It doesn't feel like a full course on its own, and it doesn't really justify itself.
Yeah, that I hadn't given that any thought, but you're probably right. I mean, for whatever reason, this voice actor was able to be wrangled back in, and Sten's was not.
I'd like a standalone Sten origin thing. Well, I don't know. Actually, knowing his backstory, probably pretty grim.
True.
Yeah, just sort of murdering families on the coast.
But then Witch Hunt is a little more substantial. It's I guess the Morrigan module, but you don't play as Morrigan in it. You just it's about tracking her down. It is a postscript to the game. It requires, I think, a warden that took the deal and survived the finale of the main game, and then is searching for her. Maybe they allow you to do a new character, but it seems like it would be really pointless.
I don't think you can for that one. Yeah. Maybe you can. I mean, that is worth bringing up here. Like this, all this DLC, or at least the significant ones that we're going to talk about, and also Golem's Vangrak, take place after the end of the game. And the end of the game, you could possibly die. Your character may end up dead. That is an option. There's a way of subverting it. I imagine most people take that way, but probably not all. It's coded as a little shady. So if you want to be the big heroic sacrificial hero, then yeah, you're taking the loss, and they have to kind of overwrite that for the game to continue here. Technically, you are allowed the option of being a brand new warden character in Dragon Age Awakenings from Orlais. Yeah. I've never bothered with that. I bet it's pretty interesting, actually, but not so I'll bother with it.
Well, Awakenings is its own complete game, I would say. It's not what you want from a full Bioware product. It's a little too short for that. But yes, you can start with a new character there in a way that makes sense more than Witch Hunt is really about resolving a relationship with Morrigan. So if you're just a stranger, you have no way of even knowing what was happening there with her.
Right.
Two, no reason to care. Or I suppose an old god in the hands of a outlaw witch.
Hedge witch.
Is
maybe
not good for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about it's for people who romanced Morrigan. Like
yeah. All right, so I mean, canonically, I believe it goes Awakenings, then Witch Hunt, and Witch Hunt definitely serves as the finale. I would say the final story movement beat here. So I want to start with Awakenings, I guess. Come to Witch Hunt.
I want to do the other way around just because Witch Hunt's so much shorter.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I mean, in terms of gameplay, you go to a couple different areas. You do a little dungeon crawl and get a clue that sends you to the next area, but nothing. You get a couple of party members. You get a Dalish elf and a wizard, but they're very much red shirts. They don't have even the characterization of the Awakenings crew.
Not even. They're kind of they're very powerful.
Yes.
They're much better like at fighting and healing and all the things you need them to do than like your regular characters in any of the other versions of the game. And that's a little annoying considering that they are such just ciphers. But at the other hand, you don't really want to be fucking around with difficult combat at this point.
Yeah, and it was not at this point. Even Awakenings was very easy for my imported character that was sort of maxed out in the level of the base game. I think Similar. I died. I think I had to reload once in Awakenings.
Yeah, I complained about having a hard time with Origins this round. I did not with Awakenings. Basically, from that point on, I was kind of just in cruise mode. I, dominated just about everything. Even that Ghost Dragon secret boss, I was just like, "Oh, this will be hard." Ended up not being too hard.
I just walked into that, beat it with the people I happened to have on me in the first try. Because again, we're getting way into Awakenings here, but it is. It's high level stuff. There's loot drops all over the place. You probably get twice as much gold to play with and spend in Awakenings as you do in the entire base game in half the time. And so you can just, get these incredibly powerful daggers and swords and bows and everything. They're all over the place.
DLC stuff. This is what you want in DLC, You want to kind of like max shit out and just blow it up and be the most powerful version, or at least that seems to be the recipe for DLC for the most part. It's what I want.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it in story terms. It's a little more justified in Awakenings, where that is the conceit there is about the Grey Wardens rebuilding and reconsolidating their power, and so gathering up some of their powerful gear and artifacts to them can be part of that. In Witch Hunt, like you said, it's a little more incongruous that these kind of randos that you meet are level 35 or whatever, which is from all the other contexts of the series, like, the most powerful people in the world. But they don't present that way. But you don't want to be playing with scrubs, like you said. So whatever. But story-wise, Witch Hunt is interesting for the closing scene. That's what it's all about.
Do you remember how I said the De La Shelf origin had no bearing on anything that happened afterwards?
Yes.
It does have a lot to do with the Witch Hunt DLC, as it turns out.
Well, I'm glad that you're De La Shelf Romance Morgan too, then, for the full experience.
Yeah, absolutely. It was pretty great, actually. It's a reference to the Illuvian, the magic mirror, which is a part of the De La Shelf origin, is you coming across an Illuvian. To the point where I'm actually not sure if I end up skipping a good chunk of this because I already knew where the damn thing was.
Oh, well, I don't know. I mean, I did not know.
It's a really short thing.
I didn't skip anything, but I think it took me about 2 hours to wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, mine was about an hour and a half. There's very little content here. It's go to like 3 places. There's small boards, solve a puzzle at the Circle of Magi, and fight a big monster at the end, and that's it, essentially.
Yeah, and especially doing it after Awakenings, my gal appeared to be completely over-leveled, and even on Nightmare. I checked multiple times just to see, am I still on Nightmare difficulty? Because for a large chunk of Awakenings and this, my character appeared to be just completely invincible. Like, just would not. It could be stunned and just getting beaten on, but my health bar is just not even going down.
I had a similar experience. Yeah, I think I was just overpowered to the point where my defense and my armor scores were such that these guys, aside from like maybe some of the biggest monsters that you're going to fight, the witch monster pride demon thing could scratch me a little bit. The Ghost Dragon could scratch me. I might have to use a heal in that fight, but pretty much it's done. I was only on hard, and that was because it was too easy to enjoy it all on normal. Yeah.
Some of the enemies, can do the things where they like a spider can jump on top of you and like take you out of the ground and maul you, and you're just kind of like stunned. You can't do anything. And so the dragon boss can pick you up in its jaws and shake you around like a dog with a toy. Yeah. And so it's doing that to me at one point, and it maybe takes off like 1/9 of my health bar.
That would be like a kill in Dragon Age Origins for the most part.
Yes.
Getting chewed on by a dragon. That happened a few times. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I survived that when it's Flemeth doing it. But anyhow, but with your resolution with your estranged baby mama.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was, I mean, I don't even remember what the last monster is. It's a stupid name, Vardalak or something, it's a big shapeless goo monster. Who cares? You fight him, and then you see Morgan.
It's the thing that attacks Obi-Wan Kenobi in the arena at the end of episode 2.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you get the Morgan scene, and my Morgan relationship, of course, was he was very devoted to her. She really, really liked him, but was kind of dead set and convinced on her course of actions, and she wasn't going to alter that, which it's impossible to do. But she felt conflicted about it, and trying to turn on the sort of creepy elf charm that my guy narratively has, apparently. And it ended up resulting in a pretty cool ending I hadn't seen before, which is my Grey Warden follows her into the Illuvian mirror and exits the world of Thetis. His story with an unclear resolution that I'm sure will be obliquely hinted at in the future games.
Well, it has to kind of remain. Yeah, they can't resolve anything too directly there because not everybody gets there. Mm-hmm. Everybody has really different. Like, it kind of has to stay open ended, which I say is to the better. I like that as an ending.
It's a great ending. It's a fantastic ending for my Warden. Yeah, I was pretty psyched that came about, especially considering the origin for the De La Shelf got involved. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and you can also just let her go out of friendship, which is what my girl ended up doing, just because I think I had come with kind of the intention of stopping her or whatever, but I hadn't role played it as antagonistic enough against her to just and to resolve it by stabbing her, which is the other option. You stab her and she falls back through the portal she was going to go through anyway and disappears to reappear in Inquisition.
Yeah. She's not in 2, right? She takes that one off.
I'm pretty sure she does.
Yeah.
There might be references, but Flemeth
Probably.
is definitely involved in that one more directly.
Of course. Yeah. So that is a pretty good finale. It's a pretty good way to end the story. And it's a little bit like Basic Instinct almost. It's kind of just like you just had to go back to her bedroom, huh? Oh, okay. I guess we're just going to play that out. However that ends, there's no other option. And yeah, it felt right. It felt like a cool, complete circle ending for this guy, especially after the events of Awakenings, honestly. Awakening, singular. There's only the one Awakening.
No, I think it's plural.
It is? We'll never know.
I think never know. Each individual Darkspawn is awakened by their inverse joining ritual.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about that. This is a big. This is a sort of. It's a sequel almost. It's not a full sequel.
No. It's about 15 to 20 hours, something like that. It's always a little shorter than I expect because it feels like it's the first half. It really feels like it's expanding and clearing its throat for a lot more things to happen, and then it just sort of wraps up.
Gameplay wise, it has some of the hinterlands issue that we'll get into eventually, but I see the seeds of that there is that you go through the opening of this and then it feels like I just have 30 different quests dumped into my journal all at once.
Mm-hmm.
And they're 1-beat quests. It's collect this thing and bring it to this vendor.
Of an irritating nature. Yeah, like collect 8 potent health poultices and bring them in. That sounds like a pain in the ass. I gotta make those then. Yeah. These aren't great.
Yeah, and this is, but whereas Witch Hunt is a postscript entirely. It is.
Yeah.
At the end of the original game, this is spinning up a new conflict, a new villain, a new cast of characters, with one exception, basically, and it's doing its own thing with a beginning, middle, and end, I suppose.
I was shocked, like how this is actually kind of a dry run for Inquisition. It feels like narratively. Yeah,
well, you definitely you get the holding court mechanic, cutscenes of what do you want to do with this person as the ruler of this castle.
You get the home base that you're kind of building up, your castle base of operations that you are improving, and there's missions there that you can do that will increase its sustainability or make it stronger, in a siege, things like that. You can add to your home. You can do quests for the people that are living there, and it gets bigger, and there's more things available to you the more time you put into it. And even some of the characters and locations are kind of straight out of Inquisition too. To the point when we talk about adaptation, I'm kind of just going to be like, well, it's a little derivative if you go straight into Inquisition after this. But that's a whole thing.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that shortly, I'd say. The way that's set up is basically once you go through the opening, there are 3 basic quest lines, I suppose, but they're all shorter or more compact than the main quest lines of the main game. You go to one area and there is a big open board there where you pick up a new party member, and then there's sort of like a dungeon area that you can go into. This is how they're all laid out. The best of them, I would say, is the Black Marsh. That gets you Justice, which is the best of these characters. But there's a mine in the place where you get the elf with mage, and then there's a dwarvish tag underneath the area where you pick up the Legion of the Dead dwarf lady. We should probably talk about actually the first couple groups or characters you pick up in the opening.
Yeah. So the premise here is it flows pretty smoothly from Origins, which is post Blight, after you've saved the world from the Darkspawn hordes. In my case, Queen Nora is sort of consolidating power for the new reign. You are sent on a mission to the Amaranthine Coast, the former lands of the Howe family, who you killed in the first game. it is now under warden control, and basically you're setting up shop on the Amaranthine Coast, and once you arrive at the stronghold, Darkspawn attacks, and you're right into it.
Yeah, and once you clear them out, you get a cameo from Alistair, or I guess potentially Logain, depending on how you resolve
Honora
things.
for me. It was Honora.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Logan did show up later, though. That was cool.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, he's dead in my version, but they actually put, because in my version, my lady is married to Alistair, but Awakenings manages to write a line of not. I didn't quite know because of the glitch in my original game how I left things with Alistair, and Awakenings writes the line of not really establishing whether we are a true romantic item or a marriage of convenience, and he's just likes me as a person. But he seems pretty happy. He seems pretty happy with the situation, regardless, and also happy to let me go do my own thing.
Okay. You have immediately have a party member, Mary. She's a warden initiate.
She's a red shirt, doesn't matter. She's gonna only be with you for the opening and die in the joining. But this is one of the things that this game is doing. You're rebuilding the warden's ranks too. So you are. I had a glitch in mine where I didn't actually get everybody, but you're basically inducting all your party members to be Grey Wardens along with you. Which, could be a kind of a question in Origins originally. Is like, why are we not just making everybody who's committed to this cause? Like, is there a reason why Liliana and Ogren can't be Grey Wardens too? And beyond just, it's a lot easier for game design to have everybody referring to your character as the Warden.
You're not really, I suppose, right? I mean, that you could lose them in the process of them becoming Wardens, perhaps, and. Yeah. I don't know that it gives you a tactical advantage necessarily when these people already have plenty of tactical advantages. Zevran does not need to have dreams of the archdemon to do his Zevran rogue stuff better.
Yeah, to be clear, I'm not advocating that they should have done that. I don't want it. It makes being a Grey Warden less special. It makes your character less unique, and I think having the diversity of the cast in terms of personality, especially, but in and utility and gameplay. The different classes. That's what you don't want to, as much as you don't want a party of all rogues, you also don't want a party of all Grey Wardens, I feel.
Right.
It's more dramatically interesting if you're roping together this herd of cats to one cause than if everybody's signed on under the same terms.
Yeah, that's true. There's always an aspect of sort of factional representation in the parties of Dragon Age. Like you're going to get somebody, okay, this is a city elf and she's working for Red Jenny, or whatever. And this guy is a dwarf, but he's been cast out of Orzammar, so he's a sort of a surface dweller dwarf, which means he doesn't truck with the old. They all have identity based in the location, and that sort of follows to their function in combat and in your party. That is a cool thing. And they actually maintain that here in Awakening a little bit. I mean, there's not really time to get much out of these guys. There's a few that pop a little bit more than others, but if anything, I'd say we could probably ditch a couple of them. There's just not enough gameplay for 7 new party members, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a slightly smaller group than you had in the main game, but there's I would say there's 3 really good characters, or at least character concepts here that maybe utilized to their fullest. And then there's Ogren as a carryover from the last game. And then there's Sigrun and Vallana that are kind of,
get rid of those 2. Yeah.
It's a shame that my breakdown is like, we don't need the women characters and the male characters are all the interesting ones, but.
Well, I'm sorry. Sigrun and Vallana are the worst characters. They are.
Yeah.
You know what? You can get rid of Ogren and throw one of them and make them better. Doesn't matter. But yeah, it's really about Anders, Justice, and to a lesser extent, Nathaniel Howe, I think.
Yeah. You get Anders and Ogren right off the bat. Ogren, I guess it's just, he's the only carryover. He just shows up to be like, hey, I decided I don't have anything better to do than be a Grey Warden. So I'm just came to join you. And that makes sense for him because that is not a character that had direction.
Yeah. This feels a little like,
if Sten had showed up and been like, I want to join you, then that would feel like we're doing this because that voice actor was available or because they didn't want to give up on a character they'd established. But Ogren, his character is so aimless that it's fine. I can accept this. I also figured, one, it's probably that they could get the voice actor, and maybe that partly they thought that this is a character that people spent the least time with in Origins.
That could be. I don't know. I was of the impression that they're treating him like they're like, hey, it's your favorite Ogren. Remember Ogren? He's the HK, of Dragon Age Origins.
Oh, Shale is very much that.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure why this is the guy they bring back, other than you're right. Narratively, it makes some sense. But they treat him like a conquering hero returned. I don't care about Ogre.
That's kind of DLC stuff too. That was like you have to assume everybody who's bought into this kit, like there's a nostalgia trip aspect.
Sure,
so we're in Marvel Phase 4 at this point.
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
they're pretty sure we're going to cheer the return of Wong, like for us. Like we can do a 10-second applause break. I
actually really like how the Warden is written, returning in this case, in this way. He's kind of got, he's sort of like after they make James Kirk the Admiral in Star Trek, like, he's sort of, Lion in Winter, a little bit, just like everyone thinks he's a celebrity and everyone treats him accordingly. And my guy responded to that quite well. My sort of asshole Warden was quite taken with being treated like a hero everywhere he went. That gives it a nice little friction, I think, that isn't there in the first game, where he is such an underdog the whole way through. It's neat, and it also kind of works with the stomping you're giving to all the enemies in the game.
Yeah, he's the least serious character.
Mm-hmm. It's just like, yes, once again we've saved Earth as we know it. Classic William Shatner style protagonist at this point.
I see. Okay, so also in the opening, you meet Anders, the apostate mage. He's sort of an escape artist who's he's on his seventh escape attempt, where he always gets caught and dragged back to the circle. This, the character concept here is not that strong, but the writing and the performance of it is better than some of the others. And to that end, more effort went into here. I presume because they knew already that this was going to be a character that carried over as a party member in Dragon Age 2.
Anders is a humongous character in the in the larger Dragon Age kind of story, such as it is, to the extent any character can kind of be huge in these. He's not quite Morgan, not quite Varric, but he's probably right under them in the actual importance he has narratively.
Yeah, alongside Liliana, probably.
Yeah, Liliana's up there. Yeah, same tier, perhaps. He's a huge part of Dragon Age 2, of course. Which is the next game we'll be talking about in the Bioware Omnibus.
And his part of that is what carries over into Inquisition too. And I think also Anders is kind of a reviled character among some parts of fandom because of his role in Dragon Age 2. And I think that is some stuff he does in that game, which we'll get to. People don't like it, but I think really they don't like that because that stuff is so lore. It's so embedded in the lore. It's all scripted, and you don't have the chance to control his story the way you can the rest of your party members. And I think that chafes at some people.
Yeah, I know. I've at this point, and I think that might have bothered me more back in the day. At this point, I'm kind of just like, I understand the rails that we're on a lot better in all these games, and frankly, as they go on, there becomes less and less rails. It becomes less and less that carries over. It's just too hard, I guess.
Yeah.
And changing philosophies behind game design too.
But I start to miss that then when it's gone.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And that's, whatever. I mean, maybe it's, I long for the bars of my cage, but I'm more like, just tell me a story. That's what I'm here for more than I am here for roaming the hinterlands to gather elf fruit. Yeah.
Oh, that is the complaint. What we'll be talking about, in May of next year when we talk about Inquisition or wherever the hell it is, when we get to it. This is definitely. How's one put it? It's Anders is he's a linchpin figure, and I'm very curious how much they knew about what they would be doing with him in the second game when they wrote this one, considering how prominent Justice is here too. I mean, was it a case where they knew what they were doing from the beginning, or did they just see what they had on hand and capitalized on it? I'm not sure. Maybe as we play too, it'll be more obvious.
Yeah. My perception right now is that they did know. That was the thing that they seemed to have the strongest handle on in this game anyway.
And maybe 2 as well, which was sort of notoriously like forced out about like 18 months later, something like that. So I guess it would all been the same creative cauldron forming these things.
Yeah, they didn't actually have the time to have sorted it out organically over time and have that around. You know, the way that like Spike becomes more prominent as seasons go on in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like they're shooting it all at once.
Anders could be the Spike of the Dragon Age franchise.
I think that's kind of what they want him to be.
Yeah.
Which one thing I guess mechanically is, these characters, we don't feel like we get to know them as in depth as the others, partly because you can't do like the party camp or even out in the world, like instigate a conversation tree with them and dig into their backstory. There will be certain things where there'll be a couple, like 1 or 2 scripted interactions with them if they're in a particular spot and you start a conversation. But otherwise, you click on them and they're like DLC characters, like Kasumi or Zaid in Mass Effect 2, where you can interact with them and they'll say something back to you, but you don't go into a conversation like cinematic or tree.
Right. Yeah. Some of them have more going on, I feel like. Anders definitely talks more than others. Nathaniel Howe does. To the point where I wish he'd shut up sometimes. Yeah.
Well, that's the next thing. As you're loosed into the world, there's they tell you there's a prisoner in the dungeon. You go down there, and there is the son of Tim Curry's, horrible villain from the first game, who's Nathaniel Howe. You have taken over his family's ancestral castle for the Grey Wardens now, and he was caught stealing something, and now he's down there. You can summarily execute him if you'd like, which. This is one of those things where I get torn between role playing and just like a character. Like a lot of times, like my character, it's a big lift to be like, yeah, let's let this guy out and have him join my team. But I'm also like, clearly that's where all the good content is going to come from.
Yeah, I would have absolutely killed this guy, but I knew there was content to be had. I wanted to, talk to him and stuff, and as it turns out, have him open every chest in the game. That was his major role. Useful. I hate this mechanic where you need a rogue to open treasure chests and lock doors. I hate it. I'm so glad it's going away, or at least I'm starting to play rogues now going forward. So it's going away in that regard. Get that shit out of here. Yeah.
It's frustrating, but I like that there are 4 classes and that they force you to use them all.
You're right.
It
should just be automatic then. Yeah. I shouldn't have to build up that skill. So what it means is I take the rogue who can open locks. I never take the other rogue that I have on my team.
Yeah. It's just, it makes that they build up a whole alternate build that you could do with a rogue, but it's like, no, you can't do that. Like, why? Then I just need 2 rogues. They're a support class.
Yeah, it sucks. Yeah.
But I like this, Nathaniel Howe is a great character concept. It's that the son of the arch villain that murdered my family in this case, and then I murdered his father, and now he's going to join the Grey Wardens, and we're going to be forced to work together. That's great dramatically stuff. I want him in the TV show,
right? Yeah,
for that purpose.
Yeah, he should be there. It's good. I don't think they particularly ace this character when it comes to writing or design. He's kind of just some dude.
Well, he's an uber great archer rogue, kind of like you said, because he has to be for gameplay mechanics.
Right. Yeah. And that's fine. It feels like there might be more you could do with this guy. Give him a little bit of conflict in the interior. But again, we don't have all the time in the world. I think this is a character you would flesh out in adaptation. Yeah. Correct. Put him in the show. But yeah, in the context of this, he mostly is there because, I need someone to open those chests. And I don't get my other rogue until much later, and she's less interesting, just on her face that she's got less going on. She's a dwarf. That's about the end of it.
Well, she has more on her face because her face is tattooed up.
Sure. Yes. Okay.
I guess we can go to, let's go talk about Sigrun first. Why not?
Sure.
That's one of the sort of things you can follow up on is there's a, stop me if you've heard this one before, a hole in the ground that leads to the deep roads where darkspawn come out of, and there is an abandoned dwarvish Tig, as they call their settlements. You have to explore and cleanse of darkspawn. And you find the sole survivor of a dwarven sort of scout party, a member of the Legion of the Dead, which is the dwarf version of the Grey Wardens. And that's Sigrun. She is this sort of new... Oh, I mean, we should say, I guess, that part of this, they've introduced some new like character feats and new class specializations for Awakenings. And she is this sort of... I guess the idea is you make your two-handed rogue a tank that wears heavy armor, and I don't know. I never quite figured out what exactly I'm supposed to do with her because it's so much simpler to just use Nathaniel's lockpicking abilities and bow. And I know how that works.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm afraid so. There's every kind of grouping of skills that you have in your upgrade menu now has another row that you can fill out, essentially, at least for the major classes, like a sword and shield or two-hand or elemental magic. Like your big groupings have extra that you can do now, and you get a lot of levels and a lot of experience, and you get to kind of fill out all of those in this. So you can play around with them. Ultimately, the game is not that difficult. So you can rely on your old stuff if you need to, or you can play around with the new stuff. Doesn't really matter.
Yeah, the thing. One of the new warrior subclasses seems really useful, and yet I could never use it because aesthetically it makes your person into a translucent ghost in all the cutscenes when the mode is activated. And it's already bad enough that like my weapons and armor are all glowing and sparkly during those things.
Sure.
But it really annoys me when they're actual see-through ghosts and nobody is reacting to that.
I got a bug on Justice that made him invisible through most of the game, and you could see like his eyeballs inside of his skull, like busted ass.
Is that not just that he had Mark of the Fade or whatever activated that I was talking about?
Is it that? Is it just that? I don't know. I couldn't get it off, so maybe that was it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if it's going to happen to any party member. It almost makes sense that Justice would be a pair of floating eyeballs above some armor. Like,
yeah,
that is a character design that doesn't totally break him.
He also does a weird pulse that I couldn't figure out how to turn off when you're walking around.
I believe that mode is called Aura of Insolence. And it took me a long time to figure out. It's supposed to be, it's like a new form of threat, or taunt to bring enemies at you. But I guess it's supposed to be that he's like yelling at the enemies to get their attention all the time. But the way the sound design, it sounds like he's just stomping his feet constantly. It's just like you're calling Shai Halud.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know. Not my favorite design choice. Put it that way. But Justice, great character concept. The best, maybe. Certainly the best in Awakenings. This is brilliant. This is what I come to Bioware for. Honestly, is characters like this. So cool. Great idea. Yeah. I mean, I think we're pretty much done talking about Sigrun. There's nothing more interesting with her. Yeah, talk Sigrun. Talking about the Blackwater Marsh. It's cool. Yeah. That's the best of these quest lines. You go to this haunted marsh where people died years ago, and you find out that there was the Baroness, like the ruler of that area in ancient days, was a blood witch that had her subjects rise up against her because she was using their children to extend her life. Your basic Elizabeth Bathory kind of thing. Yeah. Sure. I definitely know who that is. She's a blood witch. She's one of your blood witches. Yeah. The real life one. She bathed in the blood of virgins to keep young forever. That's our Baroness. All right. Yeah. And so now the whole place is cursed, and there's a part where you get drawn into the Fade as the sub dungeon here. You do that there. And you also meet a spirit of justice that has an
inhabited the corpse of a Grey Warden that you came there to find. And now he's animating this rotting corpse, and it's this sort of single-minded being that has a very black and white conception of justice that it's always trying to mete out. And that's introducing conflict with the grayness of the Dragon Age world.
Yeah, they are in fact the Grey Wardens. This is a great idea, and it's an extrapolation of existing lore in a cool way, because the demons in this world are sort of avatars for the 7 deadly sins, or close to. There's rage demons, pride demons, lust demons, sloth demons, and they all just kind of come out, and you can read the codexes on exactly how all that works, and it's interesting stuff. But it kind of is just, well, if you've got that, you've probably got the opposite thing too, which would be spirits of positive qualities that exists, that are personifications of justice or whatever, what have you. They don't go into it in detail. It's not the 7 cardinal virtues per se, but yeah.
No, but I guess that's sort of what they're trying to get to with Wynn in the base game, that she
I killed her immediately.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't. I never got her up to like me enough to. I was nice to her every turn and talked to her a lot, but didn't give her the right gift or whatever. So she never actually explained to me what I know about her backstory, which is that she was killed in the Mage Uprising and resurrected by some Fade spirit. I don't know if it's a spirit of faith or mercy or something like that. But but that's not as interesting as a spirit of justice. That is makes him kind of a Judge Dredd type, or a RoboCop, perhaps.
Yeah.
Who's got this sort of incorruptible, but also is applying a philosophy that maybe is too rigid for the real world.
What's really cool about Justice is him struggling with that. In the conversations you have with him, you can kind of see he's experiencing the difficulty of his philosophy, which can exist a lot easier when you're sort of an airy spirit, I suppose, or a concept of something rather than a person, and whose actions directly affect the thing. And he's having a hard time accepting that, and that's something I would love to have seen expanded on. The problem with this, honestly, is that Justice should be in a 60-hour game, not a 15-hour one. This is. It's almost a shame they burnt this character on DLC.
Well,
that said,
his version of this DLC is partly as a prequel to Dragon Age 2.
Yeah.
And to be fair, the character does kind of get ported over to a 60-hour.
Very much.
I don't know how long Dragon Age 2 actually is, but it's not over and done with here. It's not like Nathaniel Howe does not get fully articulated here, and because of that, something's left on the table. This is partly sequel to Dragon Age Origins, partly, especially in Anders and Justice's stuff, prequel for Dragon Age 2. If you bring around Anders and Justice all the time, they sort of develop a relationship through the party banter interactions, which is where a lot of the characterization in this comes from, because you don't have the camp dialogue trees. But that's some of the best character stuff in this game is those two interacting and coming to sort of understanding. Anders obviously is a very sort of, meta. He's not a full-on Deadpool, but he is. If we're keeping it with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he's the Xander, I suppose. A little more self-aware, a little more insouciant, and that makes him a good foil for Justice.
We've already called him Spike in this episode. Yes, yeah. He's a stick-out character, and yes, as is Justice, and they are they're inextricably linked in the second game. So it's cool that this exists and is almost for them alone. This thing is really worthwhile, Yeah. In the context of the larger Dragon Age story that is being told over here, I think it's this DLC is kind of amazing, really, in that it is sort of a slantward prologue to something else entirely that goes off in a direction you do not expect, and but is justified and satisfying. It's really cool. It's something that'll be a lot of fun to talk about in Dragon Age 2 when we speak about that coming soon. Yeah.
There's one more character to speak of here. Valana, the sort of Dalish elf, who's So part of the storyline here is that the darkspawn that you're fighting have become a little more intelligent, more organized, and they mislead her into believing that humans slaughtered her tribe when it was actually darkspawn, and so she's been killing humans left and right, and has to, once you show her that she has to kind of atone for it by becoming a Grey Warden as well, and fighting the darkspawn without fully ever really apologizing or changing her mind. Like,
yeah.
So she's an angry elf. That's fine. That could be, they don't do much with it in this case.
No,
it could be more.
There are versions of this that are done better in a lot of other games. Witcher 3, I think, has like it feels like 5 versions of this character at some point or another. I don't have much to say about this. It's a very unappealing design for her. She's not a particularly useful party member, and yeah, her story has some juice to it, but it's not engaged with in any particularly meaningful way. And this the Winding Wood, the board that she's on, is not a fun board, honestly.
No.
It's sort of a pain in the ass to get around. Kind of just wanted this one over with.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I mean, honestly, even in like Inquisition, well, Dragon Age 2 and Inquisition will do more with this in different ways. Fenris has an even angrier, less repentant version of this, and Solus as somebody who's sort of gradually revealed to have some of the same stuff going on as Valana, but is sort of masking it better with other stuff. That's all for future games, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I think it's clear that the idea is something here. You know, there's the bones of something that will work for Dragon Age with this character. It just doesn't in this case, and there's not much time to make it work, and they get it right, you know, pretty quickly after. So, you know, where does that leave Valar? Almost nowhere, really.
Yeah. So the other thing to talk about here is the villain, which is one of the other strengths of this game. I'd say it has a stronger, more interesting villain than the Archdemon, I suppose, than the base game, probably than Dragon Age 2, the Architect.
Okay, you're calling the Architect the villain. Okay.
Yes. Sure, the antagonist.
I don't know. The Broodmother is the antagonist of the story, like, per se. With this, a more epic Broodmother than the one in the Origins. You know, it's got more tits. It's more cutscenes of her sort of writhing and shrieking and losing her shit. So she is more prominent than the last one. Yeah.
What do you want to call the Architect then?
Fair enough. A sort of he's a third party. I don't know. My guy got along with him very well, so maybe in my playthrough he wasn't a villain in any meaningful sense. Mm-hmm.
Well, mine did too. Well, he kidnaps you at one point. You view him that. I mean, granted, this replaying it 10 years later, you know that how it's going to end up, and you don't take his threat seriously. Sure. But the Awakening storyline presents him initially as the leader of the enemies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the reason the Darkspawn are now talking. Yes. You know, so yeah, see, he's up to something clearly.
I mean, he's doing this. It's doing some of the stuff that Mass Effect 2 does with the Geth here. It's sort of Is there a way we can treat the orc analogs as their own society or civilization, their own race, their own culture, whatever. And Darkspawn, that's a bigger lift.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, Darkspawn are so explicitly just like, we're the sins of man, we're ogres, we're, but I feel like that's something that if you make these stories long enough, your evil horde, either they are just explicitly the most faceless, most, personality-free creatures you can make them. But even that, I feel like, I don't know, I guess the ultimate example of that would be the Lord of the Rings orcs, right? I mean, that's the version of that is most successful and, everyone's most familiar with. Even on Lord of the Rings television show, they've gone like, well, I guess we got to humanize the orcs at this point. It's sort of one of the things they're trying there. It's a bit of a faceplant from what I understand. I haven't seen that season, but
yeah, some of it works.
Uh-huh.
I said it's a heavy lift, but it's also one of the things of if you want to be as you're doing.
If you're trying to do a humanist story, it doesn't work for a race of evil people to exist necessarily.
Right, an intelligent race of beings that are born evil, and irredeemably so, is a rough thing to do for a humanist perspective, but also in a more practical narrative perspective. As you're trying to do seasons upon seasons of content, you want to be able to spend more screen time with the villains, the enemies, and for them to be one-dimensional becomes more of a handicap. But also getting them out of that, it can be hard. Not less explicitly fantasy stuff struggles with this too. That at a certain point in the Battlestar Galactica reboot, it becomes hard. Like they need to make the Cylons just the same as people, and that's hard to square away with some of the stuff they've done in the early seasons, or even like all humans, the others on Lost.
Sure.
Like the more time you spend with them, the more we have to find out they're not so bad and all that. But that's like, yeah, but you were just straight murdering people left and right in the first season.
Well, they are bad technically, but here's the reason. I can't even make sense of Lost now. Over a decade later, if I try to like explain how all that worked, how the others related to Dharma, related to to Jacob, I would just be completely confused and I'd have the wrong answers for you.
You know who else can't sort that out is Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cruz. Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, well, it's not that here. We're trying the thing where we're like, well, what if they had characters? What if the Darkspawn were people? And they're not good people. They're still monster folk, but like they have needs and wants and things now. Interesting. I remember thinking this is the direction they were headed at the time, that we're going to be, humanizing the Darkspawn like this architect character seems to imply that heavily.
Yeah. This
ends up not being anywhere near as significant or important going forward as Anders and Justice's relationship, for example. Right. This is sort of thing that kind of got pruned. I suppose he could always show up again, but no, I mean, at this point, they're kind of trying to make it harder for you to remember these games. It seems, they're not even remastered, and any choices you make in this game no longer matters in the modern iteration of Dragon Age. So I imagine this has just been, excised right now.
Yeah, as we get to Inquisition, I haven't played the Veilguard yet, but it feels like it's continuing the trajectory of them deciding that actually they want to get away from the Darkspawn and the Grey Wardens as the spine of this world.
I actually think that's awesome in a way.
Yeah.
In the Dragon Age Origins was the Grey Warden story. That was the one about them. That was one about Darkspawn. What else do you got? Is kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, but it's the trajectory there too. I mean, and like we said, that we, like many people, consider Origins to be the high point of the series, but that is more about mechanics than it is about storyline necessarily. And I think there is something positive about them steering away from the Lord of the Rings part of the DNA and more into the Game of Thrones part of the DNA.
Yeah, I think so. I think that the nature of how these games work, I think that, finding exciting branching choices kind of stuff, that's more Game of Thrones than Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is kind of primal and kind of has to go one way, Honestly, these are some of my problems with Inquisition too. When you get right down to it, it's just like we're forcing into these kind of like these big world changing events. Just sort of limited in how much you can actually do with those.
Yeah, well, again, and that's as much kind of mechanically as it is thematically or narratively. Is that it's hard to have every game allow you to dictate the fate of the world, and then have to do another game that follows that up with vastly different fates of the world to account for.
This is why 2 is so fascinating. I can't wait to talk about that game. Actually, some major problems with that, but man, what a great idea! What a great idea Dragon Age 2 represents. Yeah,
there's great concepts there. It's a kind of a mess mechanically, but we'll get to that. But there's also just, I think the people, the head writers or whoever are in charge of the big direction, kind of decided that actually it's more interesting to look at what does the what as a conflict, the Kunari invading southern Thedas in a war of conquest is a more interesting conflict than we could be on our fourth blight by now. If every Dragon Age game was just another blight, like
yeah, no need to ever do another blight, honestly.
Right. Well, that seems to be what Awakenings is like. They're awakening to that reality. That yes, the Darkstar is still the enemy of this game, but we're kind of is transitioning towards other conflicts that are more gray. I don't know. We're going to end up with Corypheus anyway, who's a pretty straightforward villain.
Yeah, it's kind of a stupid monster, man. Sure. Yeah.
Well, and he's related to the Architect. That they visually they have the same similar design because they are both, I think, canonically members of the group of Tevinter Magisters in the ancient days that first broached the Golden City and unleashed the taint upon the world.
Well, here's the question then. Should the Architect just have been Corypheus or vice versa? Should that be the through line?
That's going to be hard for me to answer until I replay the Legacy expansion for Dragon Age 2 that introduces Corypheus.
Yeah, I mean, it's a larger question for our Dragon Age overarching conversation, I suppose. But just in the terms of just sort of a narrative economy and build up and set up. Now, obviously, this is stuff you can't necessarily chart out perfectly. 2020 hindsight, though, would that have cleaned things up? In the case of adaptation, for example, is that something you might
that is where we're going to want to apply that, and maybe there's something there. So, is there anything we want to talk about the Architect before we switch over to adaptation entirely?
Right.
Is there anything else about the Architect or the mother here that you really want?
The mother's not terribly interesting. Yeah. She's a oopy goopy monster, and it's a creature that really hits in Dragon Age Origins. So you bring it back for the sequel. That's it.
And we need, if we want anybody to actually consider allying with the Architect as the Lord of the Darkspawn, we need a really gross, nasty villain. If we're going to forgive Darth Vader, we need an Emperor who's completely unrepentant in their evil.
Yeah, sure.
To fight against with them.
I wish it'd give you the option to side with the Brood Mother. Yeah. I don't know, the finale here, the final round of actions here, it kind of happens fast, like I was saying. All of a sudden, you're just like, oh, we're in the very end now. You finish your 3 big boards, and it's kind of like, oh nope, siege time. You got to deal with it right away. And I left a lot of kind of boring side quests just unfinished and undealt with because I was like, fuck it. I guess I'm not going to have Vallana do the joining. Let's just wrap this up. And it does fast. It's just like you do not get to come back to your castle after it's over. You just go straight to the titles, and Senator and Mrs. John Blutarski riding off into the sunset. And yeah, it's a close wrap up. There is some fun siege mechanics there. It's over too fast. I think I think almost every single Dragon Age game, I would say, with the exception of 2, the last mission is too short.
I disagree with the base game Origins, but we kind of talked about that last time.
Yeah.
In this case, so did you it gives you the choice of like the Darkspawn are on the march. Do you want to protect the city of Amaranthine or your castle, Vigil's Keep? And I did the city.
I did the city as well. My logic was I had paid very highly for, a full, a fully mounted protection. I gave the dwarf all the money he needed for ore, and got all the things everyone needed to raise my defenses really high at the castle. And it didn't seem to matter much. They just said, "Oh, it's not going too well at the castle," and then in the Animal House wrap-up credits, they said, "And everything went fine at the castle."
Same here.
Yeah.
But I think where you feel the corner cut here is that you have to, because you can only take your party of 4, obviously.
Right.
So there's a thing of, all right, you choose who's going to go with you to the city, and the others are going to stay and defend the castle. You should be cutting back and forth between both those locations and controlling both parties.
I would have liked that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
that's maybe beyond the remit of a DLC expansion, even one as large as this.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But that's a shame. You could get, again, an adaptation, a pretty good climax out of this. And you mentioned you didn't get Valana actually into the Wardens either. That was sort of a glitch in my game. Partly because the Wending Wood, like you mentioned, is not a well laid out board. I went in and accidentally cleared out the sub dungeon there before I activated the thing that actually got her into my party. And I think because of that, it glitched out the thing of she kind of agreed to be a Grey Warden, but we never did the joining with her. It also kind of glitched out the narrative progression of her sister was captured by the Architect and had joined with the Architect down there. And I imagine if she had been with me while down there, there would have been some drama around that.
Yeah, I just honestly I was so checked out on Valana at that point. I think I didn't get a lot of her story resolved either, and it might just have been because I wasn't interested in it and kind of didn't care. I didn't really appear to have the option of giving her the joining because talking to the guy who would be the person to join Valana triggers the end game.
Right.
And that's kind of what happened. I was kind of just like, oh, I should talk to him about, I guess we're doing endgame. It's fine. Who cares? That's essentially how it ended with, And there's no wrap up and tell you what happened to her or any of the characters, really. I find that frustrating.
I got the, Senator
I got Ogren.
I had it for all of them. But the thing that irked me there was that for several of them, it was like for Valana and Anders, their resolution was like, after a few years of being a Grey Warden, they decided that they'd had enough of that and we're going to go wander off and do something else and just like say goodbye to the Warden Commander. And that was it. And I thought this was a Night's Watch, we serve for life thing.
Mm-hmm. Supposed to be. Well, they talk about, Anders talks about that a little in Dragon Age 2. You'll be happy to know.
I would allow it for Anders specifically because his whole deal is that he's been running away from the Mage Circle his entire life. So I get that he has the wanderlust that would lead him to flee the Grey Wardens the same as he did before.
Sure.
But I think it was like 3 of them or so. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Look, we need to get into the adaptation here, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Now, as a preface, we've talked about this. Mass Effect aching for adaptation. Dragon Age, I don't think this is aching for adaptation. I think this is a real tough one, actually. I think you could make a really good show out of it.
I think it could be incredible, and but also pretty narrowly tailored to me, perhaps. Like I said, Mass Effect, Amazon is apparently going forward with making the Mass Effect show. That has crossover potential. This less so. This really needs Mass Effect to be a giant hit to draft it at wanting to give it a shot because it is going to be also hard to do cheaply.
I don't think you can. I don't know if you've ever saw the Wheel of Time television show that Amazon stupidly decided to produce at the same time as their Lord of the Rings television show, which is the most expensive show ever and looks it. Wheel of Time basically gets produced from, I don't know, I would imagine it appears to be about a quarter of what they spent on Lord of the Rings, and it is a similarly large, expansive fantasy world with kingdoms and action set pieces and monsters and things, and it looks like shit. It just looks terrible. It looks you cannot get lost in it. It looks like an episode of Xena, the Warrior Princess. Just
a little better than that, but I think it's a huge mistake, like you said. It's directly on Lord of the Rings corner, and that's your corner. Why are you competing with yourself in this manner? The most damning thing I can say about the Wheel of Time, which I may have mentioned previously, is that I watched basically the entire first season and got 10 minutes into the season finale and just gave up and never watched it again. Like that's just the timing on that is the most brutal review I can give to anyone.
Well, there has been a complete second season at this point. I don't even know if it's canceled or not right now, though. I haven't seen a second of it.
Nothing really is canceled these days, even when it is.
Yeah, so. Nothing ever ends, Adrian. Not even a Wheel of Time television show on Amazon. So yeah, don't do that. I guess you can't be making this show cheap, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, my pitch to a studio on this would be that it is. It's a way for us to get the Game of Thrones crowd with some of that like but it's a more crowd pleasing Game of Thrones, a more conventionally satisfying. Like we can do a lot of the same aesthetics, but there's going to be big battles where the bad guys get defeated.
It's not a deconstruction in the way that Game of Thrones is. This is just using the tropes. This is this is doing the thing straight, as it were.
Yeah, but it's Lord of the Rings with some more blood and maybe a tit here and there.
And some scheming bureaucrats, which are kids love scheming bureaucrats. That's the hot thing now. So
of course, but almost that's the way to just try and convince somebody to throw money at this. I think actually the aesthetic of this should be fairly wild compared to Game of Thrones. Like, I think the way you want this to end up looking is my pitch is: what if somebody, for some reason, let RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan direct Lord of the Rings?
And that sounds good. I like that. Yeah. I mean, if I were really trying to get this show to happen, like if it was my goal that this show exist above all, I think the obvious thing to do is animated. This is an animated series.
It could go that route. Yeah.
You can just straight draw everything, and then you were kind of not limited at all in your design. You can do whatever the fuck you want, much like the series. Each new game kind of has a different design aesthetic to all of it. They change what the Darkspawn look like game to game. It's some people it bothers. I think it's really cool. I think I like that each game looks different, has completely different combat systems, plays different in most ways. The different parts of the world, different, and I think you can carry that over a little.
I mean, look, I think you're definitely right that is the way to sell this, as animated allows you to do it on a fraction of the budget and all that. The only reason why I resist that is because I feel like the animation is going to turn it into an anime, which the game designs themselves have been kind of steering more and more towards. And that's what I don't want it to be. I would want it to be a sort of hand-drawn-ish Western style traditional animation.
Yeah, I mean, I could really see it looking like the War of the Rohirrim film that just came out. Actually, the Lord of the Rings anime.
Yeah, that I haven't watched that, partly because that is not an aesthetic that I'm not into.
Yeah, but it doesn't really transcend it in any way. Okay.
But let's say for sake of argument that we're doing live action.
Yeah, I think ultimately the artistic version of this that I would like would be the live action one.
Yeah, and I think the sort of threshold question that I've started posing with all of these is when you're looking at a Bioware game, if you're putting this into a movie or a TV show, do you need the player character involved? And
it's a good question.
In some case, Knights of the Old Republic, Mass Effect, that's been like a yes. You can't really have this without the player character. You need Shepard for that. With Baldur's Gate or Jade Empire, it's like, no, actually, they have they saddle you with a supporting character that's so crucial to the lore right off the bat that person could just be the protagonist. And in this case, the answer is very much yes. This Alistair could just be the hero of this story.
100%. Yeah, you could absolutely make Alistair the guy. That would make sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's not my pitch. However, my pitch is completely opposite of that.
Okay.
Which is, I think we use all of the origins.
Oh my God.
6 of the player characters.
Crazy town.
So
that's too many characters, Al. It's too many characters.
Well, we can kill them. That's what's great about it.
Okay.
So my pitch is that you have your opening, your pilot. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a 2-hour event, whatever. And it is sort of split between, you got Duncan in Denerim, and he's sort of encountering both the human noble and city elf origins. You blend them together, so the Hows are the ones are the evil humans in the city elf origin too somehow. And we meet the city elf and the human noble, and they both end up leaving there with Duncan. And meanwhile, we're cutting away to where Alistair is in Orzammar, and he encounters the dwarf origins there, and the castless dwarf and the noble end up leaving with him there. And the premiere ends with them going to Ostagar. And at Ostagar, we won't do the Dalish or the Mage Tower openings. They'll just be there ready to, we'll meet them in Ostagar and probably kill off the mage, especially very quickly. Maybe he even dies in the joining. I just think, I mentioned this.
A couple of these guys got to die in the joining, I think is essential. Yes.
Well, the mage can. I think especially I don't want to open at the Mage Tower. I think that's something we want to come to later. It's a more mysterious location.
Yeah.
And we don't want to give away the game. We want to encounter that place in its ruined state later on for intrigue purposes.
Do we need all these dwarves? Is my question.
We need to kill one.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I don't know. I mean, we definitely want the city elf character. Makes an enormous amount of sense to bring along. Human noble. Yes. The rest I could kind of see my way to dismissing, though. And I don't mind coming to Orzammar later either.
This gives us bodies to drop throughout the season without losing any of the essential party members. I agree. And what also allows us to do is use as a lot more parts of the buffalo, sort of like we talked about with Mass Effect. Doing this allows us to do the Morgan romance, and also have the say Alistair noble woman romance that leads to her making the big heroic sacrifice at the end. And so we get the big tragic romantic ending, and then also get to do the witch hunt stuff later on. We also get to have a diversity of alignments, so we can use sort of material from the evil playthrough and the good playthrough as case by case.
Sure. Okay. I mean, having just completed a largely evil playthrough, I don't know how much of that demands adaptation. A lot of the time it kind of feels just sort of contrary. You know what? I am going to ruin the urn of sacred ashes. Fuck you. Why not? And that, I don't know that needs to be dramatized as such.
I think this is my pitch for that.
That
is the point. We have our evil, say one of the dwarves is our kind of more evil guy, and ends up on the sacred ashes. So that's a character that's not been getting along well with the party anyway. And when they get to the sacred ashes, they're just there. He wants to defy all the ashes or whatever, and you have the sort of arc there of Wynn or Liliana, whoever will not do that, and you end up having the party turn on itself and dueling the guy and killing him there, and that's an episode that is something new to the series that wasn't in the game necessarily,
right?
But it's also extra drama. A sort of internal antagonist, I suppose.
I'm actually down with that. I suppose that's okay. I still want to kill Wynn off randomly at some point.
Yeah, I don't think she's going to
keep all them alive. Yeah,
Wynn's not making it to the end.
I mean, we can lose a surprising amount of those guys, I would think, and it would be okay. Like Zevran, I
think Zevran dies in the finale.
In the Sten doesn't have to make it. Shale
doesn't have to.
None of these guys have to make it, really.
Shale, I think. Who's killable and who's not? That's always a topic that interests me.
Yeah.
So Morgan obviously is not. Alistair, I say, is not. Technically, you can do the game where he makes a sacrifice at the end. I think having him take the throne rather than a human noble origin character is better as a resolution anyway, because he doesn't want it.
I mean, he's an Arthurian figure. If you make him the protagonist, take him to the throne, that is that is Arthur. So I think that totally just it works as narrative. Obviously, it's the cornerstone of legit English folklore and fantasy writing. So yeah, that would be an obvious thing to do. Only question is it too obvious for this franchise?
I don't think so. I think it's fine.
Okay. Sure.
Then there's Liliana, who has a role to play in Inquisition. Not that you couldn't write her out of that if you needed to kill her off desperately.
Don't kill Liliana.
I don't see any reason to do that.
No.
Sten, you're right, could come or go. One of the reasons I like having all these extra characters around is that it would lessen the pressure on me to kill him off because I love the guy.
Yeah, I'm okay with he can make it to the end and die or not die. I mean, they don't all have to die. In fact, it shouldn't be everyone dies, but even Harry Potter knew to kill off a whole bunch of people at the end.
For sure.
It's still a worthy thing to do. It raises your dramatic stakes, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oghren, I was thinking about this for a long time that Oghren should die at Denerim too, probably, but then he's in Awakenings, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, but yeah.
I kind of like the idea of him as sort of just this sort of unkillable,
Yeah.
He keeps turning up figure.
The cockroach, yeah.
Yeah. But, I also don't care if he dies.
Me too.
I mean, I think all these characters have, a lot of them are so well defined and drawn and, important. Morgan and Alistair, are significant figures. The rest of them, I think you can fuck with a lot, maintain the core of their character, change their course of events, write them out, write them back in, put them in places that they weren't in the original game. Maybe they're with the series going forward, or not, or certainly more of them can be in Awakenings, I say aside from aside from Anders and Justice, I think you can kind of take out most of the cast of Awakenings, just leave whoever was left over. If you want to do Nathaniel House, sure, but you don't need to.
Let's stick with the main game for a bit before we get into Awakenings, because that's a difficult transition for the series to make, I think. But
I have a good idea how to do it, but okay, go ahead.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, so Severin and Wynn, we said are killable. Shale, I think, is probably going to bite it in the Deep Road stuff, the Anvil thing there, mainly because I think having your own golem is a little
God mode. Yeah.
Too powerful, too OP, as the gamers say.
Well, I mean, he doesn't have to be. I imagine, sort of a Chewbacca, I guess.
Yeah, kind of. But I think that the party will feel more vulnerable having lost their big superhuman rock
it's true.
beast. Mm-hmm. And for that's also why I don't want to. I want to kill Winoff and the Mage Origin if you're including them quickly, because I think having multiple wizards around doesn't dilutes the pool too much and there's a little too much room for fuckery when there's too much magic in the world.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Or you can just sort of depower them a little too.
You can do that too.
You make them less capable of doing stuff. It's an adaptation. We don't have to worry about Morgan's healing mechanics. That no longer is a concern. It's just how does a mage fight on screen is all that matters. Yeah,
I mean, I think my take is always going to be, we're going to remove healing magic almost entirely. That was the problem with the Wheel of Time, is that the second episode, some major character gets their throat cut out in a battle, and then 10 seconds later, a wizard puts their hand over it and heals it, and they're back on their feet. We're 2 episodes in. You've already shown me that watching a main character die doesn't mean anything.
Right.
What do you want from me at this point? That's my pitch, and I think that gets you 1 to 2 episodes of origin stuff. You do 1 episode of everybody getting together at Ostagar and doing the joining to become Grey Wardens. You have the Battle of Ostagar as 1 episode, and now that's 4 episodes basically into a season, and we're getting into the main game. Mm-hmm. Lothering is 1 episode on its own, and then we have 5.
A lot of characters show up there, yeah.
Yeah. So then I'd say we have 5 more. Well, 3 to 5 more episodes to finish out that season, to kind of decide what to shuffle around there.
Uh-huh. Redcliffe makes sense early on, which I think is cool to go straight to Mage Tower from there. That's always a mechanic thing I liked, a structural thing I liked.
It leads in there. Yeah, I think actually, so the way I would want to arrange that is you go to the party arrives at Redcliffe Village, but know that we're under siege from zombie army coming out of the castle every night. And we established that, okay, we have to split up. We have a big group here too, so we can split people up pretty well. And so we're going to send some people to the Mage Tower to try and collect a mage to root the demon out of this castle. And the rest of the party is going to stay and, do help sort of Seven Samurai stuff, helping them prepare for the siege and all that. And so then the following episode after that, say episode 7 at this point, is just the party under siege in Red Cliff Village the entire time, getting worn down. Kind of a fantasy version of the 33 episode of Battlestar Galactica, perhaps. And they're going, they were supposed to be back by now. We don't know what the deal is. But maybe they're all dead. We don't know, but it's getting more and more desperate, and we're just trying to keep the villagers alive and their hopes buoyed. And then the following episode just opens up in the fade. It's disconcerting. People are lost in this dreamland, and it's all about them realizing that, we were waking up to the fact that we're now caught in the fade because we were halfway through the Mage Tower and we got drawn into this evil dream by the sloth demon. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of an episode unto itself. The fade is an episode. And then we circle back for the season finale. We're cleaning up the Mage Tower, going in to clear the demons out, to, sort of bringing the cavalry back to Red Cliff.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, you don't think you need Orzammar as a finale for season 1?
I think that the way that Red Cliff and Mage Tower are tied together leads that to a sort of natural climax.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the fade on screen seems like a really cool thing to adapt. Mm-hmm. Kind of a fantasy version of the Black Lodge from Twin Peaks, something like that. I think would be really cool, really neat, really would serve the purposes that the fade is supposed to serve, and has the potential to just be something very different than what you expect in a show like this. So even as it's the part I don't really like in the game, I think it's an obvious and necessary thing to put in the adaptation. And it in no way has to be beholden to the aesthetic established in the game either. So go for it.
No, of course not.
Do cool shit there. Yeah. So, I mean, that could serve as a finale for sure. I'm just thinking or Orzammar would, or the dwarf town would. I mean, I think you run into a little bit of trouble in any of these sort of quest-based kind of narratives where, it's episodic. You're doing one place to the next, to the next, to the next. When you're trying to build a season to a finale, you kind of like, well, it'll be, a big fight at a place, and you kind of have no choice but to do that and check off your locations on your checklist of places that must occur. I'm open to them fucking with this more. The conceit of, well, you've got these things, you've got these signed documents from from all these groups of people that you got to go get them to come and join the fight. You can fuck with that completely. There can be any number of reasons to go to Orzammar or Red Cliff or all these places that aren't
sure.
as video game checklist oriented.
Sure, but you agree that you do want the series to visit all the main quest lines, right? I mean, I guess
pretty much, yeah.
If we were trying to compress this down to a single season or something, then I could cut out the Dalish elves. But
yeah, I like the idea of having elves in the woods. That's fantasy tropes. And you can set up the alluvian for the end of this arc.
True. Actually, and I like having the contrast between, as much as I don't like the Dalish elves that much on their own, I like having the contrast between them and the city elves.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that could also open season 2. I think it should, in fact. Some alpha adventures.
Here's the difficult part for me. Like I said, Orzammar, I'm fine holding off Orzammar for season 2, other than it's where, I kind of want to collect the party as fast as possible. And so We're not going to meet Ogren until late in the game. It makes the most sense, I guess, to meet Shale there too. And you kind of want to get Shale in the mix earlier. But
well, you could do the same, or you could find Shale in much the same fashion you do in the game. That wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, she could be on Lothering, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Or in the Mage Tower,
or just a town you pass through. It's not. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you were building this out to be 24 episode seasons, like it's 1992 or something, then it's a lot more random villages.
There's a whole episode about Shale. Yeah. I mean, I guess there's enough material in that you could do it with the cat demon and the little girl and stuff. All that is adaptable after a fashion. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's kind of the same material as the Red Cliff's Arl's son.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Although, I don't know. It seems to be the sort of thing that happens a lot. A lot of demon possessions in the world of Thedas.
Yeah.
Did you hear that thing, by the way? Did we talk about this? Thedas just stands for the Dragon Age setting.
Yes.
That's so funny. I didn't realize that till this year.
That's okay. It's okay because it still sounds good coming out of your mouth. Thedas sounds fine. So, like I say, I can break down like episode by episode, like a first season there, if it's 10 episodes, and I think it's fairly linear. It splits them off, but brings them back together fairly quickly. Season 2 is more of a muddle to me of how exactly you do it. I think you're splitting people up again, not in the exact same. You want to, move the Rubik's Cube around, so you don't want to send the exact same groups apart,
right?
Mix and match. But you send some people to the village of Haven because that comes straight organically out of the Red Cliff storyline anyway. And some people to Orzammar probably. The problem with that then, and then you also have people going to the Brazilian Forest, people going to Denerim to do general Denerim stuff before the lands meet. And so you're not going to break people into 4 groups, but you're going to need to like reconnect everybody and mix them up again a second time. I'm not exactly sure how to beat out all of that. But I think you need a couple episodes of Haven and a couple episodes of Orzammar for sure.
The Arl of Redcliffe, once you have cured him, I think that creates a home base in Denerim in the game, but also in this story. I think that allows you to kind of hunker down, and the second half of the season largely is about Denerim, I think. Not saying you're locked in there, but you can kind of hang out there and tell a lot of stories about Denerim, and it's essentially King's Landing at that point, and ends with a massive siege with a dragon. I think there's power, I think, in contracting the world when it comes down the road, down the line. Once you've seen these places, we can kind of focus on one thing to do the story as it were, and that would be most of it wraps up in Denerim.
I think before that, though, before we I don't know. I mean, I think you need like about 4 episodes in the underground, like 2 episodes doing some more politics stuff, and 2 of exploring the deep roads and doing the Bronca stuff with the anvil. And I think you need at least 2 in Haven because you want 1 where it's just like Wicker Man, culty, creepy villager stuff, and then 1 of it's Indiana Jones, finding the Holy Grail puzzle.
I feel like that's 1 episode. I think Haven can be 1 episode.
Well, not if it's intercut with stuff going on in Orzammar.
Well, fair enough. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Or in the woods with werewolves. I think part of my issue is that Orzammar and Haven both feel more grandiose, like they should come after the Brazilian Forest stuff. But maybe it's just sort of there's a mid-season climax, and then we're doing some miscellaneous Denerim stuff while some people are down there messing with the werewolves, and then we meet up to do the big Denerim stuff. That an episode where we're dealing with the Hows, and episodes that's just about the jailbreak of getting the captured people out of the fort, and then an episode that's all about the lands meet.
Yep.
And then we don't need to go back to Red Cliff. We can just do the end game there. It can be a siege of Denerim that where our guys are the defenders the entire time.
Exactly. And I think you have strong characters and personalities that can rise to the fore, and this becomes Game of Thrones in a very real way, where it's all about politicking and advantage and who you've built enough relationship points with over the course of this thing to, that'd be the video game version, but you know what I mean? You can do what Game of Thrones does with King's Landing. The best scenes of any given season are going to be the King's Landing scenes. Do it. Yeah. Go for it, and you can remake the entire aesthetic for Denerim too, of course. I would want you to. Denerim is one of the least interesting places you go in Origins, so at least to
visually, yes.
Yeah, so change all of that. And I think if you've got something like the Red Keep there, I mean, they should feel free to create new lore.
That's true.
Fort Draken, just make Fort Draken sort of their version of it look cool and have some stuff, some games that can happen in there. Even create new characters whole cloth, to kind of to serve the roles that a Varys or a Littlefinger would do. That's fine.
we're
Arl
certainly going to
Howe
want to
certainly could be
spend a
better.
lot. Yeah. We need to spend more time with Logain, more time with Arl Howe.
Mm-hmm. Like Logain is an interesting character already. This is his chance to shine. This is the best Logain material you're going to get. Is this corridor of the story? So yeah, I think that you lose nothing by doing that. I think that it kind of clarifies everything, especially when an army of monsters march on it at the end.
Yeah, I mean, so arguably we could send people to Denerim right when like everybody else is going direct right off the bat if we want to like establish that early on, and they do some sort of side quest type stuff there for an episode or two, and maybe they have to flee to meet up with everybody else, or maybe they're just there and we're shuffling people back and forth.
Yeah,
that's all. Yeah, I mean, and I think by the time, like I was saying, for me, if we start out with 5 or 6 player characters, we whittled that down to 2 by the finale, and maybe only 1 that actually gets out of the second season finale alive to do witch hunt stuff. Then, and we kill off Zevran and win in the meantime, and Shale potentially. Like, I think that's enough. That satisfies the Harry Potter / the Hobbit standard of you should kill about 4 out of 11 elves or dwarves. Whatever.
I mean, yes, I agree. I think that the main thrust of Origins is basically concluded by the end of season 2 of this show, and then the third season is you get one more season basically of this particular game and this thing, largely made up of the Awakenings DLC, but kind of just pulling whatever, anything that you want to do, anything you want to add, any storyline that didn't get a full articulation or that you think is worth bringing back in, you can kind of just pick up and do here, whatever the hell's going on, Liliana's old people, or any of the character stories, of course you can do at this point. And then, there's enough material just in Awakenings to structure a season around as well, especially if you got Witch Hunt at the end. Yeah,
you're having to beef things up a little more there character-wise.
You get to beef things up there. You are allowed to do that. That is the gift. And you don't do Sigrun or Vallana, but maybe you bring the other ones in. I think Nathaniel Howe can be done. Sure, why not?
I think. You want Nathaniel, Justice, and Anders. Those are the good meaty drama stuff. I say sure, throw Sigrun and Vallana in there. They don't need to be like equal billing necessarily. They can be supporting characters, and they can be killed off even before the finale if necessary.
Yeah, and give them one in the joining for sure. Yeah. I kind of like that idea, actually. You build up a new character, spend the whole episode, and then they don't make it through the joining is neat. Do that at least once.
That's neat, yeah. Yeah, well, that's sort of what I was getting at with having these. If we have all the origin characters established, and then we kill the Dalish Elf origin guy in episode 6 of the first season, it's like it gives it a little bit of that Game of Thrones juice of they're not like maybe we don't know what's going to happen here. It's not all going to go down in the season finale even because we've got sort of spare parts to play with.
Yeah. Well, who's the central character in season 3 then? I mean, Alistair is sort of ostensibly the guy for the Origins playthrough here. Ostensibly, it's kind of about him leading a ragtag gang of wardens, really. And maybe more of the regular characters are trying to do the joining too in that case, Zevrans and such. And it really is about the entire thing is kind of about rebuilding the ranks in the way that the Awakenings is.
I guess it can't be Leliana because she's going to do a lot of the same stuff for Inquisition. It could be, and Oghren doesn't fit as even Alistair would not make Oghren a commander.
Well, I mean, it could be any of the player character types that come over. I kind of like the female noble that is married to Alistair. I kind of like her, actually, as in that role. But
I was thinking she died killing the Archdemon. I like that ending for Alistair better. And I want the city elf who romanced Morrigan to be, we're cutting away to them doing witch hunt stuff throughout the season.
If a warden kills the Archdemon, why is there a witch hunt though? Like, then they did not take Morgan up on her offer, and that's no longer a thing.
Touche. I mean, I'd say because he was in love with her, but there also needs to be an element of betrayal of like, how could you do this to me? To it.
No, I think why
did she leave?
I think they take Morgan up on the offer. Alistair sleeps with Morgan, and that is the sort of the core of betrayal at the center of their relationship now, and it's sort of it's Camelot kind of a thing where now the human female, noble, really has it against Morgan, and she's leading the witch hunt aspect of this.
I think the party as a whole, Alistair and the human female noble, reject the plan when they're let in on it, but the city elf, who's already has a thing with Morgan, just does it behind their back anyway.
Okay.
He is the one, like, he's looking for his child and her because she left as she promised she would, but he didn't agree to that.
They also would be just finding out that it happened when they didn't die from killing the archdemon.
Yeah. Well, it does. You could die.
Well, no, the way it works, the archdemon is searching for the baby. Yeah, the archdemon leaves the corporeal form of the dragon, and joins the nearest life source. And it's a war.
I'm saying
generally.
It's possible it's possible to die in the battle with the archdemon without it being a burst of magical energy that kills an otherwise healthy person. It could be ambiguous whether you died of natural causes, being that a dragon's corpse fell on top of you.
Okay.
Stuck us through I don't know. There's different ways of doing it. Like there's different ways of
minutia. You're going to play with that. It's going to be dependent on the actors you cast and how well they're gelling. How you want to handle this, That's the thing. True. You can always rewrite this sort of thing. Dragon Age, you can make your plans, and Dragon Age as a property allows you to fuck with them. There's always multiple ways to resolve a story here.
But you're also right. We need the noble to be alive for Awakenings because that produces the most interesting relationship with Nathaniel Howe.
Yeah, I think so. Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Okay, you're right. So two of them have to survive the base game.
I just want the most soap opera-y kind of, you had sex with somebody and now there's betrayal kind of dynamic that you can take into this. That's all.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you on that. This should not be a dogma style human drama thing where everything's very grounded. It's fine that it's soapy and bloody.
Yeah. So that's 3 seasons of a show. What I think is cool about adapting Dragon Age is, like, you're kind of forced to do something different after that, no matter what. Like, we're going to talk more as we get into the as we talk about Dragon Age 2, Dragon Age Inquisition, how it adapt those. That's a different conversation, but I do like the idea that this story is done after 3. And Dragon Age could continue, but it would have to change forms dramatically. It would have to be like, okay, we're going to restart. We're going to reset. We're going to do a new cast. Maybe there's some carryover, but for the most part, no. It's a whole different thing. A whole different medium would be my argument. We'll get to that. And you've got a complete 3-act structure here. And I kind of like that it has... I like that the big finale kind of happens at season 2, and then it's sort of just a settling, like what happens in a life after you've done the big thing, like,
that's what I was going to say is it's not a straightforward 3-act structure because it peaks after 2. There's already a transition between season 2 and 3 in this conception of it.
Right. But it's
then Dragon Age 2 presents
the same stories. Yeah. But
we're introducing, there's Anders, now there's Justice. We're introducing a lot more new cast in 3 than you are in 2, where you're still whittling.
Well, I don't think so, though. I mean, Anders and Justice, yes, but like we said, the rest just fucking, Nathaniel Howe's probably already on the show.
Oh, that's true.
Like we can do that. That's cool. That's cool. I mean, you might be introducing fewer characters than any other season in season 3, actually.
Oh, well, minutia again, but that's actually a good point. I hadn't even thought about how just Nathaniel Howe would probably appear in the Howe material in the earlier game. That's good. Yeah, that'd be a good show, man. I'd watch that show.
You're right. I think this actually is surprisingly robust and exciting as a potential television program. It's cool. It's good.
And then when we get to Dragon Age 2, it'll be its own unique problem to solve.
Yes. I do think that ultimately the problem with Dragon Age as a show is just that it is derivative of a lot of very popular things, in a way that even Mass Effect is not. There is a Lord of the Rings show. There's certainly Game of Thrones shows, plural. It's going to be familiar. So, I don't know if this...
That would be construed as a positive in some rooms.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
I think the hard part is aesthetically, it is in some ways, high fantasy, an immature form, a genre, but with very mature aesthetics around it.
Mm-hmm.
It risks being some of the worst parts of like doing grim and gritty R-rated Batman stuff.
Well, I mean, Game of Thrones has already broken the seal on that, and this is not as R-rated and adult as Game of Thrones is. It isn't,
No, but it's more conventional, and I don't just mean in using elves and dwarves. I mean in its narrative, like builds and payoffs. It's not Game of Thrones is subversive in how it's bringing some No Country for Old Men to Lord of the Rings. It's doing prestige
mm-hmm.
TV anti-hero stuff. It's bringing No Country in the Wire into that milieu. And this is really just like, putting a lot more blood and maybe some nipples into Lord of the Rings is more.
Yeah. There's no way around that, man. That's about right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm not ashamed of that. I would still watch the shit out of it.
Right, yeah.
But I think it just behooves us to know what we're doing. It's not as narratively challenging as Game of Thrones, even as it requires some of the aesthetics and the budget that Game of Thrones needed to pull that stuff off. I don't know. It's a little harder of a niche to hit, perhaps.
I would say that like the time to make this happen would have been like 6 years ago. That would have been striking when the iron is hot, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas now there's so many other versions of this. Wheel of Time, Witcher, many other shows, kind of
House of the Dragon, even.
Yeah, and more on their way. There's the Ballad of Duncan Egg or whatever the shit. The market is really satiated with this right now. So, I mean, speaking in realistic terms, I don't know if this actually makes sense in the way Mass Effect does, but it would be good. You could make a really good thing here. It has the potential. I don't know if it has the potential to make money that Mass Effect does, but that's really not our problem. So fuck it.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of potential to make money and stuff, I think you're right that it missed riding the Game of Thrones wave, where it would have made sense if this was, like, was there a show with like Tim Daly where there was like a ripoff, like a Lost ripoff, where it was like about a bank robbery gone wrong, and they were doing flashbacks to that.
There were about 12 Lost ripoffs.
Yes. Right. Or the Heroes. Yeah. This was the Heroes. As Heroes was to Lost, this could have been to Game of Thrones. That wave has passed. Now we need Mass Effect to be the next Game of Thrones, and then this can try and ride those coattails.
There you go. I mean, it is a shame that I think like Dragon Age Origins specifically is not getting a remaster for some reason. It doesn't appear like they have much interest in bringing this game back. I mean, they're already like flailing trying to do Knights of the Old Republic. That was supposed to be out by now, and now it's not even sure it's going to ever be released as a remake. So it's kind of like an open question. If not for Dragon Age: The Veilguard, when? Maybe never. This is, I wouldn't say on the verge of becoming lost media, but it's certainly on the verge of falling out of popular consciousness.
Sure. But at the rates we're going, eventually they will have cannibalized and remade everything from the 80s and 90s and now the aughts, and will just be the search for IP will continue in Spaceballs 3.
Yeah. All right.
But actually, speaking of Lost, sorry, I did have a whole sort of alternate pitch for how you could structure this.
Okay.
Just drafting off the title Dragon Age Origins, that one way to structure this
like Lost
series would be like Lost, where every episode focuses on one character and has flashback material. This is another area where having 6 origins characters helps, because you can do each origin could be a flashback episode for that character. Leliana's song could be a flashback episode for that character.
Right. Then you do those.
Sten.
Yeah.
And especially if you're only doing like 2 seasons, you don't need that much flashback material. You're not going to get down to the level of what's Jack's tattoos about.
Famously, yes.
But you can just do 1 to 2 flashback episodes per party character, and probably, Shales will be a good one.
for sure.
Alistair is maybe not as much, but
well, that is certainly a structural thing you could do. And it would make logical sense because of the origin structure of this game. I don't think you need to. I'm kind of more excited about your other thing here with the, every origin character exists in the world. That's fun. I like that. And I think that's a good way to go forward. Huge ensembles work for these things. You kind of just have to, make sure that you write characters that are as interesting as the ones that are already there, which is no small feat. Yeah.
Well, and if you fail, you just kill them off earlier than you might have planned.
That's true.
That's my pitch.
That's the other Game of Thrones thing. Yeah.
There you go.
All right.
So maybe it is more Game of Thrones than Lost. Okay, fine. We're back to where we started.
All right. Well, that is the final word for us on Dragon Age Origins and its DLC and how we'd adapt it, the whole gamut. Several hours of content. I hope you enjoyed it all. I did. Thank you for listening. And coming back eventually for Dragon Age 2 in the new year.
Yeah. Off to the free marches.
And the slave city of Bravos, kind of. It's kind of fucking nuts, actually. It really is Bravos. Yeah.
They're called literally the free cities.
Yes, they are.